welcome back. I cannot thank you guys enough for joining me for another video today. In it, I want to look at the bottom 10 offenses in the NFL for fantasy football. These are 10 offenses that I am trying to avoid if I can at all help it this season. Obviously, there are going to be players on these teams that you're going to want to take in your drafts. However, if you are picking between one or the other, you can't decide which player to go with, and one of them is on this list. Just know that there is a lot more risk when it comes to the offense overall, and therefore there's going to be less opportunities for those players to put up points. But before we get into that, if you guys are new to the channel, if you haven't done it yet, maybe you've enjoyed content from me in the past and just have not clicked that button yet, a like and a subscribe would be so very appreciated. It helps me out a ton. Now let's get into this version of Hot Off the Press. Landing just outside of my 10 teams to avoid on offense, I have the New York Jets. And that's because they're getting a ton of hype, and for good reason, but I think that we may be overselling what the Jets are capable of, and that all comes back to Zach Wilson as the quarterback. Not only that, but they have a lot riding on rookies this season. Breece Hall has very high expectations, and I'm not sure that he's going to be able to reach those. Also, Garrett Wilson, even though he was such a highly drafted player and one of the best ranked prospects at wideout, is he still going to be able to break out with what we saw from Zach Wilson last year? I think that's a massive question mark, and maybe tread lightly when we're talking about the Jets. Now to my list, and at number 10, I have the New England Patriots, and I know they have a great offensive line. It's going to be one of the top 10 best units in the league, but is that going to be enough to carry this team, especially after the losses that they suffered on that O-line? Mac Jones, while he was certainly fine, does not do a ton to move the needle for me. And the wide receiver room, do not even get me started, is an absolute mess in New England, and they refused to do much of anything to try to help Mac Jones out in that regard. Going and getting Devontae Parker, who really hasn't done much over the last 6 years of his career, is not exciting. And then there's Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, and Nelson Aguilar. Really, maybe wide receiver threes who they have asked to do a lot more and haven't really been able to step up to the plate. I think that New England is an offense that I want to try to get out of if I possibly can. And with so much riding on that running game, I think New England is probably a very low scoring team this year. Next up at number 9, I have the New Orleans Saints, and this might be a surprise to some people, but there are so many question marks for the Saints that it makes me hesitant to invest in this team. What exactly is going on with Jameis Winston and his injury? Speaking of injuries, Michael Thomas, is he actually going to play? And if he does, is he going to be any good? Is Alvin Kamara going to be there? Or how long is his suspension going to be if he does get one? And then finally, the offensive line. After losing Teron Armstead, he was a stalwart on that left side of the line for years in New Orleans. There is going to be growing pains now that he is gone. The Saints were a bottom 5 team as far as yards per game last year, and I am not sure that they make too much of a leap this year. To number 8, and it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And once again, we're going to talk about that offensive line because in Pittsburgh, it is a major problem. They're supposed to be one of the bottom 3 teams in the league. They are ranked at 30 according to PFF right now, and that does not inspire confidence, especially when you look at the quarterback situation. Now, I know Kenny Pickett was a highly ranked prospect. Pittsburgh took him at number 20 overall, but if they are going to bank on him sliding in and starting right away, there is certainly risk there. And the other option isn't much better. Mitch Trubisky, while he has flashed great things, has not been able to do it consistently, and I could easily see him bringing this entire offense down with him. Najee Harris, while I love the talent, had a ridiculous workload last year, really similar to what Derrick Henry was on before his injury, and so I have hesitancy with him. I think there's more injury risk there than people are talking about. After being a bottom 10 team in the league last year in yards per game, Pittsburgh could likely find themselves there again this year. The Carolina Panthers are here at number 7, and they were a bottom 5 team in the NFL in scoring last year, and only 2 teams produced less offensive yardage than they did. That obviously changes a little bit with the addition of Baker Mayfield. I think that he is quite an upgrade from Sam Darnold, but how much can be debated, and it is a questionable offensive line that they're going to be playing behind whoever gets that job. Now, Carolina did a lot for that O-line during the offseason, but it is still a work in progress. With Christian McCaffrey also missing 23 games over the last 2 years, it puts a lot of uncertainty into this Panthers offensive attack. We know they have DJ Moore on the outside, and he is a great player, but there is no help for him in Carolina. It's going to be him and only him moving the chains through the air. All of these question marks and uncertainty mean that I am trying to avoid Carolina in fantasy if I can help it. The Jaguars tried to add a bunch of help for Trevor Lawrence, and they did a decent job of it, but they are still up next here at number 6 for a couple reasons. It starts with that offensive line. It's going to be one of the bottom 10 in the league. PFF currently has them as the 26th best in the NFL. I do like Christian Kirk, but I think it is asking a lot of him to move from what he was in Arizona to the number 1 target in Jacksonville. This was also the second lowest scoring team as far as touchdowns scored on offense last year, and so I do not know that they're going to make too big of a leap. Travis Etienne coming back is certainly going to help that, and he has the ability to score on any single possession when he touches the football. But it would take a massive leap from Trevor Lawrence for the Jags to make enough strides on offense for me to want a lot of pieces in this offense in 2022. Into my top or bottom 5, it starts with the Chicago Bears, who have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, second worst according to PFF, and they scored just 33 touchdowns in 2021, and that ranked 28th in the NFL. Now, I think that the loss of Matt Nagy is going to be addition by subtraction, but when you look at the cupboards in Chicago, they're very bare. We have Darnell Mooney, who is an ascending young wide receiver who probably will go for over 1,000 yards once again, but is not a wide receiver one that is going to scare many teams. Now, their backfield is solid with Khalil Herbert and then, of course, David Montgomery. Both of these guys are going to be able to produce. How much so, though, is in question, because with that offensive line as poor as it is, there is probably not going to be a whole lot of holes for them to take advantage of. Justin Fields is probably going to have a better year, but the bar was set fairly low after his performances last season, so he's still got a long way to go to give me any confidence in him running an offense. The New York Football Giants are next up at number 4, and it starts with the quarterback and Daniel Jones. They did not pick up his 5th-year option for a reason. I don't think that they actually believe in him, and that is never a good recipe for success to start the year. The Giants also scored only 24 touchdowns in 2021. That was the least in the NFL by a whopping 4 scores. And they also have the second fewest yardage on offense. So they are not a threat to score and put up points in any way, shape, or form. Saquon Barkley, although he missed 3 games, was in it for most of the season for the Giants, and that did not seem to help. Their wide receiver core, while it is very deep, doesn't seem to be able to stay healthy, and that lack of continuity is going to hurt them once again. If I can avoid the Giants on my roster for fantasy football, I am going to do that. Moving on, it is the Seattle Seahawks up next at number 3. And they likely have the worst starting quarterback situation in the entire NFL to start, and that is not a good place to launch from. They're also starting 2 rookies at their tackle spots, and between Drew Lock or Geno Smith, they are likely to get creamed. You have to think that the Hawks are going to keep the ball on the ground, carrying the load for this offense, and how often they actually air it out is going to be in question. This means fewer opportunities for Metcalf and Lockett, and they can have all the talent in the world, but if the opportunities do not come, then the production will not either. The Hawks could easily score the least points out of any team in 2022, and that makes me want to avoid them as much as I can. Just missing the top spot, I have the Houston Texans in at number 2. starts with Davis Mills, and while he was better than probably expected last year, he was nothing special, and he is not scaring anybody. They have a bottom 10 projected offensive line, according to PFF, which certainly does not help. And then if you look at the playmakers in Houston, there are question marks all over. Brandon Cooks is the lone bright spot, and maybe Nico Collins can break out a little bit more after he started that last year, but as a wide receiver too, he is just decent and not great. The running game is all over the place. Who knows what you're going to get from it in Houston next year? And the offense scored the third least out of any team in 2021. They were one of only 2 teams to have under 5,000 yards of total offense as well. So Houston is a definite pass, if at all possible. Which brings us to the number 1 team I am looking to avoid this season in fantasy football, and it is the Atlanta Falcons, who have the number 28 ranked offensive line in 2022, which is not a good start. And then we go and look at the quarterback situation, and Marcus Mariota was a backup for multiple years for a reason. I think he's a decent bridge quarterback here, but he is not scaring anybody, and it is going to be an uphill battle for him to produce very well. The playmakers are a bunch of question marks. We know that Kyle Pitts broke out and he's again going to be solid this year, but is Cordarrelle Patterson really what we saw last year at the beginning of the year, or is he more what he was at the end of the year when he started fading really hard for owners? The Falcons were 29th in yardage last year on offense, and they were 28th in scoring, and there's really no reason to think that that is going to turn around a whole lot. There is no other team that I would try to avoid more than Atlanta Falcons players this year. And that is going to wrap it up for the video today. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day to join me for it. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Drop those in the section below. I love the engagement. As always, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. To all of my current subscribers out there, I could not do it without you guys, so thank you for the support. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and we'll see you next time.